I am pleased to introduce to you two people who will join us today to speak. And these are Mr. Martin Sunkovic from the European GNSS Agency and Professor Anindya Bose from Burdwan University. They will both introduce Galileo and the technical aspects of using satellite navigation for your downstream applications. Without much further ado, I am glad to give the floor to Martin Sunkovic of the European GNSS Agency.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon to all. I'm also connecting from Europe. My name is Martin Sunkovic. I work for the European GNSS Agency, and I want to actually introduce you a bit in the beginning what our agency is and what it does. So right now you should be seeing first slide that is actually illustrating what our agency do. We are actually the agency that is responsible for market development and operations of Galileo and EGNOS systems, the European GNSS systems. We are around 160 people, most of them located in Prague, but we have also other locations all around Europe, in France, Netherlands, Spain, and Belgium. And as I said, the headquarters is actually in Prague, in the Czech Republic. From the staff, there is like 22 nationalities within the agency, so it's quite I would say melting pot of nationalities as well. As already said, we are in charge of the operations and service provision of Galileo and EGNOS. We took it quite recently for Galileo and for EGNOS in 2014. It's not only about providing the operations, it's also about providing it in a safe and secure way. And we are also ensuring that the European companies are using Galileo and EGNOS at its utmost use, not only the European companies. And also that we are making sure that the European citizens are benefiting from the Galileo EGNOS. So this is actually the task of my department where I work, the market development department. Well, having introduced the GSA, I would like to just share the reasoning why we actually decided to organize the hackathon in India. Well, first of all, we are actually tasked with this quite interesting job of making awareness of the Galileo, and actually we are using GNSS Asia, our project funded by the European Union, to actually promote the Galileo EGNOS systems abroad. So that's one of the reasons, but why we actually choose India and Bangalore in this case, because we think that there is very high potential in especially from the point of view of the growth of users in India. And for the second reason is actually we think that within India there's plenty of brilliant brains that can come up with more ideas of using GNSS and in this particular case within the smartphones developing the applications. So that's for the intro, and as a start, as a warm-up, I would like to share one video from our promotional campaign towards the. It's really targeted for the broader audience, but I think it's quite interesting video to share, a very short one, to illustrate why actually accuracy matters. I hope you can actually hear the sound.
Yep, we can.
Okay. So I think that was enough. Quite funny video. I think there are some more. I think 4 more. So if you are interested, go to YouTube and search for Accuracy Matters. And with that, I would like to hand over back to Hannes to speak about the hackathon itself. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Martin. Quickly sharing my screen back. So we're organizing this Galileo Hackathon 16th and 17th of March. And this is done by a project called GNSS Asia. Our project has 3 objectives, which are to facilitate industrial cooperation between Europe and Asia in the field of GNSS technologies, that is both upstream and downstream. To support institutional relations, we work closely with ISRO, for instance, and also to promote Europe's GNSS, so Galileo, in a multi-GNSS context. This means that, of course, we're very excited to hear that people use Galileo, but we don't want to do this at the expense of other constellations. Technologies are available to combine multiple constellations in one receiver, and therefore we promote European GNSS to be included in that reality. Our project has a number of team members from all over Asia. We have people in Korea, Taiwan, China, Japan, but most importantly for you, India. Our dear colleagues Varadarajan and Ravi Kumar, whom you have been in touch with for this hackathon. With GNSS Asia, we organize plenty of events. These are often industry-related events, conferences, workshops. These take place in both Europe, but mainly in Asia, which we organize and attend. And here a quick overview of the types of activities, the workshops that we do. We really try to connect Europe's industry with Asia and vice versa. In fact, if Indian communities or companies come to Europe, we're happy to give them a tour and to introduce them to the satellite navigation ecosystem here in the West. Not only in Europe, but also in particular, my apologies, seems that my screen is acting a bit reluctant. Also in India, we have organized a series of events in Bangalore, in Chennai, and in Delhi. And the offer that we can offer you is very varied. We do networking sessions. We do matchmaking of startups. Companies that are looking for a particular supplier of a technology in the other continent can count on us. And we do a lot of marketing and dissemination, let's say, of information about each other's GNSS markets to make sure that industry is informed. You can definitely make use of that. It's free. It's fully funded. If you go to our website, www.gnss.asia, you can find everything about our projects. There's an India-specific portal on our website, and you can register for matchmaking and for our newsletter on there. So I would kindly invite all of you to stay in touch with us and to stay in the loop about our project and Galileo. Now, for the hackathon, you have all registered to join us for that, and we welcome you in Bangalore, in PES University next week. Why would you participate? I think you already know, but first of all, we have 3 cash prizes for the top 3 participants that will be handed out to you throughout the hackathon, and already from today, in fact, you can receive guidance and mentorship from different types of experts. We have people with a very strong GNSS background, but also people with an MBA, senior business experts, and leadership from consultancies and venture capital. You can meet GNSS leaders. There will be representatives from the GSA, including Martin, who just spoke, but also from ISRO and several universities in India. And at the end of the participation, of your participation to the hackathon, whether you win or not, each team receives a certificate that will prove that you participated successfully to this event. Now, in terms of challenges, there are a series of challenges that we provided. This was also all included in the document which you got from our colleagues in India. We challenge you to develop a solution for one of the following reasons. First of all, a user-friendly A to Z transport solution for Bangalore or for India as a whole. You can be flexible in that. Second, or a smart city solution for citizens who are disadvantaged with health issues. Third, a solution for safety purposes. Or fourth, any kind of smart solution that you can come up with that is relevant for Bangalore, India, or to be used globally We challenge you to surprise us and to come up with something innovative that is not even heard of. Now, in order to have a solution that is eligible, there are some minimal requirements. First of all, in your solution, you are required to use the Galileo signal and explain how you will integrate or use this. One of the 4 above mentioned challenges should be addressed, and you need to be innovative. So you need to explain and make clear that what you offer is different from the solutions that are available on the market. So for that, I invite you or suggest to already do your research. If you have a clear understanding of what is there, it might give you inspiration to find something new, to find something better. And there will be a next webinar in 1.5 hours that will allow you to learn more about the business angle of satellite navigation applications. This webinar is this hackathon is an idea competition. It means that you don't need to technically develop something. There is no development needed. You don't need to have your IT equipment with you. You just need to explain as a clear idea. This is no free-for-all brainstorming and fantasizing. It needs to be technically developed. You need to have a clear explanation about how you would take care of this, how you will integrate the signals. So there needs to be a reasoning behind all it, but the eventual implementation does not need to be done. At the same time, if you want to do it, if you want to take the next step, we do invite you and challenge you, because those teams who can come up with something already developed to a certain extent will, of course, score a higher, make a higher score. For your solution, what you need to provide eventually at the end of the hackathon is a filled-in template. You have received the link to that in the PDF, which was sent to you 2 weeks ago. You need to fill in a PowerPoint template explaining all the components that are mentioned here, with a one-liner explaining your solution, how you will use GNSS, how you will specifically use Galileo, what is its market potential, why is it adding innovation, how would you develop the technical backend, demonstrate that it is actually feasible, technically and commercially, and present your team. So all these things need to be covered in there. Now, for the award criteria, the jury will come together and will, of course, score your solution. This is based on 5 criteria. The first one is its innovation. Is it already on the market? And if so, is it better? Second, what is the market potential? Can it be sold? Is it socially relevant? Does it add value per se? Third is the Galileo relevance. Are you in fact even making use of Galileo, and do you do so in an optimal manner? Fourth is your completion level. That does not mean that your solution needs to be fully completed, as I mentioned, but is the solution ready to be implemented based on your idea, or could it be feasibly completed if needed? And fifth, we do look at your progress. So throughout the hackathon, you'll be in touch with mentors. You'll need to check with the jury as well, and we do take that into account to see how you develop. Please also note that throughout the hackathon, our jury members and experts will be closely in touch with you. If we do see that some teams are not on the right track, or that other teams are very much on the right track, we do keep a certain liberty to intervene, to help you, to guide you, or even to merge teams if needed, if we see that some teams struggle with finding the right solution. We try to keep it a bit flexible, informal, and active where we can. Now, there will be a number of international experts there. It's a whole list of experts from Europe and India. These include people from the European GNSS Agency, from GNSS Asia, from Burdwan University. We also have Professor Dinesh Manandar, who just joined us from Tokyo University. He will not be an expert on the hackathon, but he's here with us on behalf of Tokyo University and Multi-GNSS Asia. But also people from PES University and the private sector, as well as ISRO. Now, for the jury members, we will have people from GSA, from GNSS Asia, Burdwan University, but also 3 experts from industry, from Bush Open Innovation, Startup Seed Ventures, which is a venture capital firm at seed stage, and a technology company. Now, for the schedule, the hackathon itself will last 24 hours. It will start at 1 p.m. and it will continue if you desire, because you have the time, but you're not obliged to keep working, but you'll continue throughout the night. The day after, when lunch starts at 1 p.m., the hackathon ends. No solutions can be developed anymore. Your template needs to be submitted, and an hour later, our jury will sit together to evaluate you. You do have to present your presentation in a slot of no longer than 3 minutes. So that's a real challenge. So already during your brainstorm, you'll need to prioritize there. In the morning of the first day, we will organize 2 training sessions, which are rather similar to these webinars, but more developed and more sophisticated, to fully make you understand the technical context, which technologies to use, what is feasible with Galileo, what is not feasible, how accurate can we go, but also the business angle for those people who have a strong GNSS background, but who are curious to learn more about the commercial viability of a solution. Now, if you have any questions, do feel free to ask them. In order to save time, I would kindly suggest that we immediately proceed with the training session from Professor Bose. But nevertheless, you can write us at the usual contact channels via email, on our WhatsApp group, which has been shared with you, or you can write me at thekeizer@spacetechpartners.eu, or eventually write your questions simply in the Q&A, which is visible here and which I'll answer at the end of this webinar. So far, the introduction to the hackathon, and I would love to give the floor right now to Professor Bose, who will give you his training session on how to use satellite navigation, how the technology works, and what you should consider for the development of your Galileo application. Thank you very much.
Okay, good morning and good afternoon to everybody. Thank you, Hans, for giving me the opportunity to present here, and to the participants and all the other members. So here is my presentation. I am Anindo from the University of Bardhaman. For many of you, it's very near to Kolkata, some 100 kilometers west of Kolkata. In our university, we have a very good GNSS lab, which is being developed by the support from India government agencies, and we do work on GNSS. So straight, let's go back to my presentation. So it's around 2:25 now. I'll be talking around 3:15 to 3:20, and then I'll be able to take a couple of questions. And if they're not all answered today, let's meet on the hackathon day, or that's mean on 16th morning. We'll be answering many of the questions. Okay, so let's start. So under the guidance and mentorship scheme of the hackathon, Galileo hackathon, so this is technical webinar 1. So what I'll be presenting, basics of a global navigation satellite system, what we call the GNSS, a basic overview in a more horizontal way than a vertical one, that what are the many aspects of GNSS, etc., etc. And the agenda, already the challenge, it has been presented by Hans. So agenda today would be like this. So basics of global navigation system, in very briefly how it works really. Then second, current multi-GNSS. You must have heard the word multi-GNSS has been used. So what is meant by multi-GNSS scenario, and what is the location-specific advantage of India? So I'll just touch upon the GNSS economic importance. Then I'll come into GNSS space segments, how the different components of GNSS, they look like, or are supposed to look like. Well, and then a few concepts, that SBAS, and then we come about the user segment. What are the different types of sensors or the instrumentation, what we the users can use. Then what are the different types of GNSS applications over the globe. Then what are the market expectation, and where the novel ideas that fits into this market expectation and market growth, keeping in view of the economic importance. And nearly at the end, I will talk about the Galileo specific results from India, what is our experience with Galileo, particularly from that particular constellation from India. And I would introduce to you RTK and N-trip, two concepts that will help you to understand how during your brainstorming session, how you can utilize the potentials of the GNSS. Okay, so basic geolocation concept, believe me, that will be the only one with the mathematical equation. So the basic idea is like that. So the basic idea for getting one's location, somebody on the surface of the Earth or very near to the surface of the Earth, say with its location XYZ, and how he or she can find out his or her own location. So for that, there are three unknowns, X, Y, Z, and another unknown, we will talk about it a bit later, that is the time of travel, that is T. So X, Y, Z, and T, there are four unknowns. So we need to form up four equations. To form four equations, we need simultaneous signals from four satellites those have been sent to sky for this particular purpose. Those are transmitting signals in their own frequencies and which we receive with a properly capable receiver or properly capable electronics that can use the satellite signals being transmitted to find out exactly the range, that means the distance between the antenna and the satellite. That is the basic of measurement. So we are measuring the distance between the satellite and the antenna location. What we tell about the range, so range 1, range 2, range I, and range N. On the other hand, each of the satellite in their transmitted signal, they are transmitting their own location. So they are maybe XI, YI, ZI, X2, Y2, Z2, X3, Y3, Z3, and XN, YN, ZN. So from the very basic idea of trigonometry, we can write like this. So Ri, this is equal to Ri equal to Xi minus X whole square, Yi minus Y whole square, plus Zi minus Z whole square whole root. But as because we are measuring the distance between 2 points, that means from XYZ, our location and the satellite. So there is another unknown, as because for measuring the distance between these or the range, we need to measure the time of travel of the EM signal. So for that, we need two synchronized clocks, one for starting, another for stopping. As because two separate clocks are used here, so there is some time mismatch. And because of the time mismatch, the time becomes the fourth unknown. So we are with four unknowns, X, Y, Z, and T. And if we develop these sets of equation R1 to Ri, we can simultaneously solve them to get X, Y, Z, and T. And ultimately, we convert this X, Y, Z, and T into more comprehensible format, that is in terms of latitude, longitude, and altitude, what is more comprehensible to all of us. One more point is for measuring the range. So in this equation, on the left-hand side, you have got measurement, and on the right-hand side, we're using data from the satellite signal and forming the equation and simultaneously solving them. It's a very, very complex mathematical process. But to measure the range, that means the Ri, the left-hand side portion, we use different techniques. The two basic techniques, one is called code-based measurement, another is carrier-based measurement, that we will not discuss in this webinar in detail. But please keep in your mind that to solve for our location or on any point on the surface of the Earth or very near to the surface of the Earth, we are using signals, simultaneous signals from at least 4 satellites. But believe me, the scenario has changed. Now we will get much more than 4 satellites nowadays. Okay. So as of today, you can see this is the scenario of yesterday, 4th March. We are living in a situation where there are multi-constellations, constellations of satellites that are developed by different countries for this purpose of geolocation. That means they will provide the signals from those satellites, which provide the users very accurate position solutions in terms of latitude, longitude, and altitude. So as of today, once again, we are living in a scenario where multiple constellations are working, and taking all of them together, we are calling the scenario as multi-GNSS. As you know, in many cases, we call only GPS because it's more known to us. For most of the users, GPS is very well-known term, but there are many other alternatives, equally good, equally usable, and equally competent, which are currently transmitting signal from the space for the users to receive them free of cost and to get and to calculate out their own solution, own position solution in terms of, once again, latitude, longitude, and altitude. So what are the components? The first components, the oldest one and the most known one, that is GPS, Global Positioning System, developed by USA. It's fully operational. As of yesterday, there are 32 satellites in orbit and 31 operational. Must be many of the participants must be thinking of this question, why so many satellites? So many satellites, because already I told that for getting our solution, we need to get at least 4 satellite signals simultaneously, receiving signals from them. So at least 4 of the 4 satellites must be in line of sight. Okay, right. So to solve the problem, or to cater the need for presence of 4 satellites from any part of the globe, we need a constellation of satellites in different orbits. I will talk about that one by one. So that's why there are 32 satellites in orbit, 31 completely operational. The next one is the GLONASS, Global Navigation Satellite System. Once again, it's developed by Russia. It was since early 2000 to 2011, it was not fully operational. It has been revitalized again, and now there are 26 satellites in orbit, out of those 24 fully operational. The third one, the Galileo, with which today's, in whose name the hackathon has been, I'd rather say, declared, the Galileo. It has been declared operational in December 2016. As of yesterday, 24 satellites in orbit and 22 are fully operational. And the other global systems are COMPASS and BIDO, China, developed by China. There are 38 satellites in the orbit and 17 of them are operational. Okay, so till now, GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, and COMPASS, they are global systems. Anybody on the surface of the Earth or very near to it can access the signal of this satellite constellation. And then comes the regional system, the QZSS, Quasi-Zenith Navigation Satellite System. It is developed by Japan. There are 4 in the orbit and 1 of them is operational. And ultimately, India's own satellite system, what is called the Indian Regional Navigation Satellite System, or the other call name is Navigation Using Indian Constellation, or NAVIC. It's a different type of satellite system, satellite constellation design. It is planned for with 7 satellites. Currently, there are 8 in orbit. 7 of them are fully operational. 1 of them is operational, but not always taken into solution. So as a whole, you can very well understand that if you add up this 31, then 24, then 22, then 17, then 1 and 7. So we are living in a situation that so many satellite signals, they are freely available to us for the users to use them for anything. Well, for anything. So now another slide, what you can see. So it is a result of a simulation, what has been developed by GNSS Asia. You can see the website. GNSS Asia is a consortium of research institutions, different organizations, educational institutions, and also private players. So who have come together to develop the GNSS concept, training, and market in the Asia Oceania region. So if you look into the slide, you can see on the bottom hand side in the bar, it is given the number of satellite signals available. So it is predicted that in the India and the surrounding regions, where you can see mostly in the eastern part and nearly most of India, we are expecting to get 30 to 35 satellite signals within very short period of time, and you can see the result is even better. So from location point of view, India is a very, very good place to explore and exploit the potentials of this multi-GNSS scenario, what has been provided to us for different applications. Now, another very pertinent question is, why so many constellations? Why so many constellations? Because obviously, one of the major points is independence and strategic applications and strategic point of view. And the second answer would be given by this slide, that if you look into the growing GNSS market, I have taken this from this report from GSA, GNSS Market Report Issue 5. I think Martin would be talking about this later on. So if you look into this by, if you see to 2020, we can see around for the added value services, the market would be 120 billion euros, and whether the device and augmentation system, it will be 60. So 120 plus 16, 180 billion euros. So that will be the global market size. So we can very well understand that it has opened up new vistas and new avenues for exploring the market and to become one of the major players into the global market. So many of the countries, so they're developing their own system, they developed their own system, and they're operational now. So let's go back to once again to the technical aspect. So what is the basic GNSS architecture? The basic GNSS architecture, take the case of GPS or GLONASS or Galileo or IRNSS, all the, be it a regional system or a global system, the basic architecture consists of 3 segments. The first one is the space segment, the second one is the control segment, and third one is the user segment. We will talk about the space segment and the user segment, because space segment for the understanding and user segment, what is our role, to understand what is our role. For the control segment, I will talk 1 or 2 sentences or 1 or 2 minutes like that. So if you look here, so the space segment consists of the GNSS satellites. Okay, and in between, we have the user segment, different cost, complexity, and capability receivers. They consist of the user segment, who are the real users of the system or the technology, for whom the system has been developed, and who are there to exploit the complete benefit of the system or the technology. Well, let us go into the GPS space segment. The GPS space segment looks like this. In the GPS space segment, 6 equally spaced orbital planes in medium Earth orbit, that is around 20,000 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. Each plane consists 4 slots occupied by baseline satellites, so a 24 satellite constellation. But you must have seen that there are 31 satellites operational, so there are active spares. If any of the satellites satellite health goes down or it's not operating, so very quickly that can be taken care of. And so in a static mode, the GPS constellation looks like this. And if you want to see the satellite ground tracks of the GPS satellites, it looks like this. So if you take the case of the simulation has been made by our students from Hyderabad. So from Hyderabad, you can see, so the line joining the visible GNSS satellites. So from Hyderabad, any GPS user with a electronic receiver capable of tracking GPS satellites or using GPS satellites, he or she can have so many satellites, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like that, or 8, 9. And at any point of time, they can track 7, 8, 9 satellites. So earlier I was talking about getting at least 4 satellites, so we are in a better position. Just a moment. So, well, so if you see the GLONASS space segment, once again, the constellation is a bit different, that it uses 3 equally spaced orbital planes in medium Earth orbit, a bit lower than the GPS satellites. Each plane contains 8 slots. So once again, a 24 satellite constellation. And now there are few active spares and satellite ground tracks. I don't know, there's some problem with the ground tracks. Actually, I also tried to give you some feeling of tracking of the satellites using the animation. Anyway, so from the constellation point of view, it's a bit different. Earlier, it was 6 orbital orbit constellation. Here it is 3 orbit constellation. Just a moment. So Galileo, once again, it's a 3 orbit constellation, 3 equally spaced orbit. They're placed around 29,500 kilometer height with inclination of 56 degrees. Each plane contains 8 slots occupied by baseline satellites, so a 24 satellite constellation, 2 spare satellites in each plane. And different generation of each of the, well, I forgot to tell that each of the constellation have different generation of satellites. So with time, each of the satellites what are being launched by the system developers, they are developing better and better satellites in terms of capability, in terms of lifetime, in terms of good quality clocks. They're being launched. Similarly, so the satellite classes, now we are dealing with the full operation capability and what are two in-orbit validation satellites for Galileo. So the BIDO space segment, the BIDO space segment, once again, it's a quite bit different from the others. In the other three global systems, all the satellites were placed in medium Earth orbit satellites. But in case of BEDU, we can see BEDU or BIDO, three equally spaced orbital planes. Once again, along with this, they have got GEO, geostationary Earth orbit, and inclined geosynchronous orbit, GEO and IGSO orbits. So you can see here on the left, you can see some of the orbits, they lie in the mid, around 20,000, 21,500 kilometers, and a few orbits are there, 3 IGSO and 5 GEO, which covers larger area because they're transmitting signals from much higher height. And so it's a mixed type of orbital constellation, both MEO and geostationary and inclined geosynchronous orbits. Once again, BIDO has passed through 3 generations, BDS 1, 2, and 3, with increasing coverage and going from a regional system to a global system. So, in case of, now we are coming about the regional satellite system. The regional satellite system, the first one is quasi-zenith satellite system. So it's a very typical orbit. You can see here the orbital plane. If those from your satellite communication class, you may have thought of, or you may recall the Molniya orbits. So similar orbits where the QZSS satellites will remain on the zenith, that means with very high elevation angle, so that in case of Japan, because of large number of high rises and roads in between, the GPS satellite signals are obstructed by the high rise buildings. So to complement that, it will operate along with GPS, and they will continuously deliver signal so that at any point of time, any user have at least 4 satellites or more for use, and the seamless navigation or seamless solution is never hindered. So that's why this has been designed. So coming about the NAVIC or IRNSS, in our case, or in this case, all the satellites, they are all placed in geosynchronous or geostationary orbit. There are 4 inclined GSOs. So you can see these are the orbits, here 2 and here 2. So 4 inclined GSO satellites and 3 satellites in geostationary orbit, or this one, and this one. So 4 geostationary orbit and 4 satellites in inclined geosynchronous orbit. So as a whole, there are 7 satellites. Well, another complete difference from the other constellations being regional or global, that in case of NAVIC or IRNSS, along with L band, what is the band of signal in other satellite classes in which the satellite transmit their signals, IRNSS satellites also transmit signal in S band of microwave. Okay, so not to scale, if we see the GNSS frequency plan, you can see this is more or less the whole of the L band. In the L band, the presence, these are the GPS different generations, then the GLONASS, then the Galileo, then the Chinese BEDU, then the Japanese one, the QZSS, then the Indian one, and also Indian one has their presence in the S band also. So we have lots and lots of signals. Now another idea I must introduce, that is called the augmentation. So many times we need that a standalone GPS receiver be it a handheld, be it a low-cost compact one, or be it a survey grid, whatsoever may be the receiver. In many time, augmenting the satellite, the receiver signal, receiver received signal, that means through a ground-based augmentation system, through repeaters, and through space-based augmentation system, that means geostationary satellite supporting signals, and some extra signals, they are being transmitted from the geostationary satellites to the receiver. So the receiver simultaneously gets satellite signals from the GNSS satellites and also from the augmentation signal satellite, and they use it together to get better accuracy to cover more more signals. So better quality and seamless operation is possible. So if you see there's the GNSS layer, then another layer is there, what is called the wide area augmentation, and then sometimes local area augmentation are there. And in the receiver layer, the different types of receivers receive signals or information from different layers, and ultimately they improve the quality of solution for application as per the user need. Okay. So this is space-based augmentation system is BUS, how it look like. So this is the communications. These are the GPS satellites what I was talking about. So this is the communication satellite. The communication satellite receiving signal and information from the ground-based infrastructure and uplinking it to the communication satellite, and in turn the communication satellite transmits it to the users, and at the same time the user is getting signal from the GPS satellites and also for the augmentation satellite and fusing them together to get improved accuracy and improved availability, and for the integrity of the system. Never mostly for the life and property critical application, never it is in short of required resources. Okay, so final scenario looks like this. The global constellation now consists of GPS, GNSS, Galileo, BIDO. The regional constellation consists of QZSS and IRNSS or NAVI. And several space-based augmentation systems are there. We'll not go much in detail. And in case of India, it is called the Gagan. In case of Europe, it's called IGNOS. Believe me, it is the sky plot. That means we are operating from here, and we have taken snapshot from one multi-GNSS receiver. And yesterday evening, around 1500 hours IST, we got 54 satellites in view. So it's a real-time snapshot what has been taken in our laboratory yesterday evening only. So earlier I started with talking about only 4 satellites, and multi-GNSS Asia, in their simulation, they were talking about 30 to 35 satellites for the Indian region. And here we are using Galileo, GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, BDS, QZSS. You can see here one QZSS satellite. Here you can see one IRNSS satellite. Here one GLONASS satellite. Here BDS satellites. The Galileo. Here you can see GAL, that is the Galileo satellites. So we could see 54 satellites, out of which more than 50 were being used for position solution. So it's we were living in a very interesting. We are in a very interesting situation where we have access to large number of signals. Only the question is how good or how efficiently we the users are exploiting the scenario or the situation. Now I just would give you the information that GNSS ground or control segment, which is completely beyond the scope of contact with the users. You can very well understand for any communication satellite, if you recall your satellite communication classes, there are several entities which continuously monitors the quality of the signals, and if required, make necessary correction. and upload the data to the satellites. That is done by an ensemble of tracking stations over the globe for the GPS, over Europe for Galileo, over the Russian territory for GLONASS, like that. But ground or control segment is a very, very important and major part of the whole GNSS architecture. They continuously monitor and make necessary changes and upgradation into the satellite signals. Now let us come about the GNSS user segment. So when we come down to earth, obviously we need very capable and electronic system. Those would be using the incoming satellite signals. They will receive those incoming satellite signals, and those are very, very weak, and use them to give us solution. So we have shown the first of the candidates, that is the surrogate receivers, which are very, very costly. The cost is around US $20,000. They're multi-constellations. That means they can receive signals from all the constellations, or more than one constellation, of which I talked about. They've got good quality antennas with different add-ons to get rid of the multipath, etc., etc. So their cost goes on. So they looks like this, but the cost line is very, very high. And obviously for setting up a continuously operating reference station or a base station, we sometimes need this type of receivers. And those who do research work, they use this type of receivers. But for a normal user, you can very well understand it's not possible to acquire and use this type of receivers. So the OEM boards, the capabilities are equivalent to those in the inbox receiver. There you can say they're the stripped up version of the previous ones, and they can directly be integrated with other electronics as a card. So the cost line is a bit lower, but not very low cost. The third one, and the game changer, what came into the market over the last couple of years, maybe last 2 years, those are the low-cost compact GNSS modules. They're the ideal tools for R&D, for integration with other electronics, to get data and to play with it in a very low-cost manner. I have shown a few examples here. So they're the different types of chips, chipsets, or different types of very small boards, along with the antennas, which can be used. We are talking very low cost, because they can be purchased for below US $100. Directly you can place orders. If you go Amazon or a few online sellers, you can directly purchase them. Some of them are multi-constellation. That means they can receive signals from many satellites. Some of them are single constellation, that they can receive signals from basically till now what is available in India. They are capable of receiving GPS only. And the antenna cost also varies between US $5 to 100 or 120, like that. They can be attached to computers to receive data. Some of these modules give you raw data. Some of them give you NMEA data. I will talk about NMEA data later on and show you some example. A few of them are already Arduino compatible. Directly, the Arduino chip is inbuilt into the board, and you can start playing with them. Some of them are RTK enabled. Once again, RTK is another very important concept I will talk about later. Most of them still a single frequency. Dual frequency boards, at least one company has brought into the market, dual frequency board, just end of last year. And another important aspect of this type of boards is they are very, very low power consuming. Most of them can run directly from the USB port of your computer, or you can run using the power banks. Directly you can put in the power bank using USB cable, and it starts working. So they're low cost, they're compact, and they're power efficient. So these are the advantages. And the fourth one, very important one, is the handhelds and smart devices. Many of you must have used many apps which can show you the number of GPS or GLONASS or sometimes Galileo satellites, what are the signal strengths and your location. Still now the problem was, till mid of last year, the problem was like that only a handful of Android apps or iOS apps were available to record data. Or they could show you data, but they could not record data. Well, now, for example, I have shown you a few apps where you can directly, if you take your handheld device outside, that means outside your building, so that the handheld have direct line of sight of the GNSS satellites. They will receive data. Here you can see these are the satellites, so what your handheld can see. These are the signal strengths, and these are the data streams they're providing, which one can store into your phone memory or handheld device memory, which you can send over email for further processing. I think Martin will be covering this in great detail or much more detail. But while I was discussing the different grades of user devices, I must mention about this, so I introduced this one. Also, there are few other special purpose GNSS receiver, which are very costly. GNSS is now being used for atmospheric research, and second for time transfer and time synchronization over the globe. So they're special purpose receivers, and they're also very costly. The others are what is one can get, that is the GNSS software defined radio SDR receivers. They're good tool for education and training. So they will give you the baseband signal. You have to write your own program, and writing your own program, you can use the incoming signals. Only the front end is given, and you can use it for your own purpose. And also the simulators are there. Once again, costly equipments. Those who test and measure their own developed GNSS solutions, for them it's a very useful tool. And record and replay systems are also there, where you can go out and record the scenario, and coming back to your laboratory or to your company, you can play back the data and test several systems for the same condition. So these are the different types of receivers or user and devices, what is now available to us. So if you look into the IRNSS or NAVIC user segment, currently IRNSS user segment, they're not L and S band, they're not commercially available. Many companies are coming up fast for developing this one. So this is the receiver which has been developed by ISRO or ISRO and another company that is called Accord Software and Systems, once again from Bangalore. And we got information about another company who are developing this type of small chips and small boards, costing around $10 US, and the boards costing around $75 US. What is the only small form factor IRNSS module. And also the good quality multi-GNSS surrogate receivers, for example, Javad, Leica, Septentrio, they and many more, Trimble, their receivers can track IRNSS only L-band signal, not the S-band signal. That is a problem with the surrogate receivers. Now, let us come about the GNSS applications. The basic GNSS applications can be subdivided into three classes. First is the position-based applications or L applications. Second is time transfer. Over the globe, the time synchronization nowadays is made by the help of GPS. And third is atmospheric research, another very interesting topic for all the atmospheric researcher groups and researchers. Okay, so we will be concentrating more on the location-based service. So these are the snapshots what I've taken from the internet for the presentation. And so here you can see for tracking of hazmat. So it is getting GNSS signals. Getting GNSS signals, it is getting its location, and using terrestrial networks, it is sending SMSs to centralized location. So the dispatcher now have information about the truck fleet where it is. So now GNSS is being used for tracking of human being, tracking of cattle, and also for surveying purpose. So just to name a few, I will give more examples. So myriads of possibilities has opened up, as because nowadays our smartphones are equipped with both GPS modules or GNSS modules, and at the same time different types of apps can be developed where the information for the GNSS sensor it can be used very efficiently. And I've given you a few examples. For example, my favorite workout app, Endomondo, and here one can track the locations. Each of them are equipped with such a device. So now I can track the family members. So beware. So I can track the friends and family members who are there. So for already all of us use this one for reaching to a new place, even if I do not know the route, knowing my location and the destination and knowing the map, we integrate and fuse all the information together to reach there, saving fuel, money, and also a lot of time. So myriads of possibilities are open up. So I want to introduce the participants a few examples of how GNSS is now being used worldwide. So I've taken these examples from UN Nepal workshop on applications of GNSS held in December 2016. So take the case, developing sustainable collaboration model for implementing integrated space-based or geospatial disaster management infrastructure, etc., developed by University of Tokyo. Second is developing a semi-dynamic datum of Nepal, April 25 Gorkha earthquake. It's from New Zealand. On the spot identification of flood induction depth from gridded data using GPS-enabled smartphone application. So a very socially relevant application of GNSS. And here once again, the GNSS-enabled smartphones has been used. And this has been one effort from Bangladesh. If you look in the below, habitat suitability analysis of tigers in Chitwan district, here another presentation from Nepal. So I wanted to give you the flavor that for many applications, only limitation is our imagination, that how we can use the precise solution that the GNSS is providing us. So once again, now I have taken the case of agriculture, very specific case of agriculture, and a few examples how GNSS technology is being used for agriculture. Take this case, use of remote sensing and GNSS in precise agriculture. This is one presentation from Curtin University. If you take here, this is another example from Thailand, a determination of sugarcane harvesters field efficiency using a GNSS system. So they're making a field study here, how good the tractors are moving, how good the harvesters are moving, how the fuel efficiency, the manpower resources, how they're being, how to optimize the use. So another example, what was presented in MGA, Multi-GNSS Asia meeting. And if you take the case here, efficient oil palm management prototyping using multi-GNSS for replanting program. For oil plant management, replanting is very important issue. So that is being controlled and that is being managed by GNSS. Take the case of intelligent transport system or ITS for use of global positioning system for public utility bus. It is an example from Philippines. So I have just taken the examples that to invoke your thought process that how good, how efficiently we can exploit the situation what we are exposed to. Some more diversified applications, influence of global navigation satellite system errors in positioning inventory plots for tree height distribution studies. So tree height distribution, they're using the GNSS for the whole study. Another interesting study, or what just came to my knowledge yesterday only, it's a very new one, GPS technology for semi-aquatic turtle research. So it is another example here. So another interesting presentation, if you follow this presentation or if it is shared with you, you can have more feeling that in different arenas and in different areas, how GNSS technology is being used. You can go through it to have some more feeling. So now, once again, coming back, I gave you different examples. So putting them together, so what are the different market segments where GNSS can be used? So on the road, on the water, on the train, on the air, while we're going mobile, on the farm, on the map, and driving in emergency. A few examples. Once again, I have taken the photos from that very document what I referred earlier. So agriculture, aviation, location-based services, mapping and surveying, maritime, road, rail, timing and synchronization. So obviously, if you take apart the atmospheric research purpose, because we are more emphasizing more on the location-based service. So so much of market segments are there. Shomnath, একবার ফোনটা ধরে, just a minute, please. একবার ফোনটা ধরে তুমি. Okay, sorry, there was a phone call. Okay, so these are the areas where people are. These are the areas where applications can be developed, where the market is waiting for newer and novel applications, where new minds and new approaches and new thought processes, and also new idea generators and new industry inputs are needed. So if we look into the GNSS downstream value chain, one is the component manufacturers beyond our scope, but the two areas where system integrators and value-added service providers. I want to emphasize more on this one, whose service improves access and use of GNSS, GNSS-enabled software such as maps, added value services, applications, telecom, and other such uses as location-related data downloads. So in the in the GNSS downstream value chain, new ideas, novel ideas, and new concepts, they're really wanting. They're really wanted, and that is the way through which we can use and utilize and explore and exploit the potentials of the GNSS that has been provided by by the system providers. Okay. So the macro trends, I think Martin and afterwards Rainer will talk about this. So these are the new application areas where GNSS can play a major role. IoT applications, these are the different GNSS market segments where these can play major roles in smart city development, in big data. And another important aspect is mobile health, where knowing the location of the patient or knowing the location of the healthcare giver, both are important. And that's why you can see in the challenge, it has been given that one of the topics of challenge, how to support such type of people who are in distress, maybe health distress or otherwise, how to use GNSS. So the need for the market is GNSS toughening and augmenting. A few vulnerabilities are also there that is being discussed and that is being taken care of. That is what are called the GNSS jamming, spoofing, weather anomalies, environmental effects, etc., etc. And that's why we are getting different levels of accuracy using different types of receiver. I will talk at the end about the different types of accuracy. So ultimately, we want secure position, navigation, and timing, and we get very good quality time. And time is a commodity, very important commodity in the GNSS era. So for the next 5 to 10 minutes, I will talk about Galileo. What is our experience? That is the Indian experience. Our laboratory, we made the first successful Galileo solution using Galileo in 2013 and got such appreciation from European Space Agency. And we are doing initial studies using Galileo. So this is this paper talks about the initial results on the potentials of Galileo from India, but it was in 2017, very early. And now in this paper or in this study, we have used GNSS under forest canopy on Indian road. And what we got that the better reception of Galileo signals in comparison to the other GNSS constellations within the forest canopy, it should be within forest canopy. And in another research, what we found, we were studying the Galileo signal strengths, the signal strengths of different constellations. And we found that Galileo signal strengths, it is IOV satellite. IOV satellite signal strength, although it's a bit lower, but sufficient for use. But the Galileo signal strength values are very stable in comparison to GPS and GLONASS. That is another very important aspect for locking the receivers and getting your solution. So that is another that was our research output, and we are working on using Galileo signals.
Professor Bose, sorry, I'm very, very sorry to interrupt you. May I kindly invite you to remain the limit of the presentation to 4 to 5 minutes, if possible?
Okay.
We have an extra webinar planned at 11, and we would like to keep the time in.
Okay. Okay. Within 4 or 5 minutes, I will end.
My apologies for interrupting. Thank you.
No problem. Okay. So this is typical results from India. If you see, it is yesterday's data, and you can see the 2D RMS value comes around. It is only Galileo, around 2.8 meters. So Galileo from India, the issues are during some time, the Galileo signal, all the Galileo satellites remain 60-degree elevation angle, and when we are operating within a constrained environment where trees or buildings are on the sides of the building, it may create problem. And the problem occurs over the globe for 20 minutes or more. But we have made this simulation with 18 satellites only last week. 4 more satellites has been added. So now there are 22 operating satellites. We have not simulated this with 22 satellites. So what we want to do, that I want to share real life, just one screenshot of one real life GNSS data. You just see here, you can see we have added one very small form factor, small GNSS satellite here. And you can see in your screen that data is coming. At this data format, it is called NMEA, which gives you latitude, longitude, altitude, your time, your date, and other satellite parameters. And if you look into the sky plot, that means from our position, so these are the GNSS Galileo satellites. This is our position, and we can see them. So this is our north. We can see them. So this is what I wanted to share with you. Real life GNSS data. Once again, going back. So you can see GNSS data, Galileo data is coming, and it is giving you perfect position solution. So these are the signal strengths of Galileo satellites, and the satellite geometry is moderately good with a value of 3.3. Okay. So another concept is RTK, real-time kinematic. Using real-time kinematic, what is done? So this is a GNSS receiver. It is a base station. From the base station, some correction data goes to some radio, and the radio transmits the correction data. Any user called a rover, it receives signal from the satellites and receives the correction data, and getting the correction data, it improves its position solution. The accuracy level is around decimeter level or a few centimeters. If this correction data is sent through internet, we call it encrypt. So that the correction data is pushed to encrypt server, and the encrypt server to client goes to the rover, and the rover collects GNSS data and the correction factor from the internet, and improves its accuracy to centimeter level. And nowadays, many encrypt client-enabled Android apps are available. LeverPure and GNSS Surveyor, RTK plus GNSS GPS. But for this purpose, you need an encrypt server, operating encrypt server. You can set up your own encrypt server, or you can take data from encrypt server. So to close, so I have given you the basic background on GNSS, what is the current scenario and trends, what are the variety of application, to have a feel of the market and societal demands. Keep thinking, churn your ideas, and best of luck for your hackathon. This is the challenge. And to introduce our laboratory, just to give you some idea. So we are equipped with these surrogate receivers, these small receivers, and we are within short period of time. We are hopeful that we will be starting an in-trip service. And if you wish, you can go to our website and see what we do and come back to us if you have any questions. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much for giving me time. Thank you very much.
Many thanks for this super interesting presentation, Professor Bose. I very much enjoyed it personally, and I would like to thank you for your time to join us. I would like to inform all participants that a next webinar will take place in about 20 minutes concerning the more business and commercial related aspects of satellite navigation applications. But first of all, I am glad to give the floor to Martin Sunkovic from the European GNSS Agency, who will go more into detail about Galileo. Professor Bose, I would like to kindly invite you to stop sharing your screen. And thanks again for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So I would like to speak about in the next roughly 20 minutes about the usage of Galileo and with the special focus on Android devices, but we are not limited to that in the hackathon, I would say, but I expect the most ideas coming there. So I already introduced GSA, but okay, I would like to still provide more insight into the status of the Galileo at the beginning of the Galileo system. This is the overview of the launches that were made. So we are now at the level of 26 satellites. And actually, there are plans later on to actually replace those that become obsolete. So with the new launcher after 2020, with the new launcher Ariane 6.2. This is actually the overview how the constellation looked like yesterday. Actually, the status out of these 26 satellites. Sorry, there is a mistake there. There's if I count well, it should be 22 operational for the navigation payload, and for the search and rescue payload, 23 satellites operational. Okay, I think I can skip that because there is another slide talking about the services of Galileo. This slide illustrates the fact that actually in December 2016, Galileo came into an operational status in a so-called state of initial services. So it's not fully operational, but a certain level of services with certain level of guarantee is provided. So you can actually look at the performance report at our service center, where you can with backwards time scale, you can look at the performances of the system for these two services. Talking about services, officially the Galileo system will provide actually 4 services. I think Professor Bose actually talked a lot about the systems and how they are compatible, so I will skip that. But actually, for the case of Galileo, the open service, it is broadcasted on 2 frequencies, and there is going to be available the so-called open service navigation method authentication service, which I will talk about it later. There are 3 other services. One called the public regulated service, that is meant for let's say the blue forces, or actually for any users that actually the member states of the European Union decided that it should be used. It's an encrypted service. Then there is this already mentioned search and rescue service. It actually is used for or assist locating people in distress and confirms that the help is on the way. It's a part of the international initiative of providing a globally this search and rescue service within the COSPAR SARSAT system. So this is the Galileo contribution to the much bigger initiative. And the last service, it's called High Accuracy Service. It is the former commercial service. So the change of the name indicates actually that it is going to be provided for free. This high accuracy service and it's meant for the commercial applications or more demanding, more the professional applications. It has not been yet decided exactly the level of accuracy it will provide, but definitely we can expect as below meter accuracy there. And it's provided on the third frequency, the so-called E6. Just a quick snapshot on the EGNOS. It's actually the S-bus system provided just for the area around the Europe within the ECAC, so-called ECAC region. This is the same system as Professor Bose was talking about that you have in India, the GAGAN. So talking about the market, here we have a bit of overlap, but I can provide some more insights into that, and I will focus actually mainly just on the location-based services in this because that's where I expect most of the ideas coming. So here you can actually see the global market again, the charts that were already presented, but from this you can actually take that there is a growing number of the users. We have reached almost 7 billion receivers in the world this year, and there is a lot of money behind within the market. So that's why it is, as it was said, that's why it is of interest of so many players. Okay, so now about the smartphone, how actually it is perceived. Some might consider the GNSS signal and the location as a commodity already, meaning something that is provided without knowing actually what is it, the location. So, and that there's probably that much room for innovation, but it's actually not the case because as we see it and what is really happening, GNSS plays a significant role in all technological developments. In all these 5 identified developments. In connectivity, we definitely need a data stream for the GNSS proper functioning in the more restricted areas. When you talk about the indoor usage, of course, it's GNSS cannot be used in a very enclosed environments, but here we mean the seamless transition between the indoor and outdoor. So basically, that the indoor location has to be that the user doesn't even know that he's still having the location, but that he entered the indoor, and vice versa. So it's about the transition and providing the location in both environments. Availability, that's clear that the more satellites, the more availability, increased accuracy with the advent of, for example, the dual frequency or improvement of the signals. You are always increasing the accuracy and the power consumption. Then there is always the concern of decreasing the power consumption within the devices. Well, there has been a lot of said about the multi-constellation. So here are some of the data that we are trying to track from the point of view of the receivers or the chipsets that are available at the market. So you can see here how high is the penetration within the mass market chipsets of Galileo, GLONASS, and the other constellations. We have not, I mean, this data is 1 year old, so there has not been, we have not detected at that time any NAVIC device, but I know that it's not the case anymore. There is definitely some devices that are able to track the system. And on the bottom, you can definitely see another interesting picture. It's how many constellations are supported. How many constellations are supported? So there is a clear message that most of the devices are supporting 4 and more systems at once in the mass market devices. So here we can see the illustration of the advent of the dual frequency in the mass market. Because historically smartphones and or Android devices were using only one single frequency, but that has changed with the advent of dual frequency phones. The first one was launched last year in May. It was the Xiaomi Mi 8. And we have 2 followers. Huawei introduced the Mate 20 Pro. That has the same chipset as the first one, the Broadcom one. But actually, last week, that's quite hot news. Xiaomi announced their second dual frequency smartphone, Mi 9, that is fitted with Qualcomm Snapdragon N55 chipset that is actually dual frequency as well. So we are seeing a quite interesting advent of dual frequency smartphones, which brings higher accuracy, and that is already being confirmed by the users and the people that are testing the performance of the smartphones. The increase of the accuracy is quite interesting, and it really can go below meter within the smartphone devices. But I will stop there. What I wanted to highlight here with this slide is actually what do we see that Galileo is bringing in addition to the other constellations that, at the time being. The high accuracy service for the mass market, it is relevant for the future, that actually through the internet protocols you could be hopefully able to receive the PPP corrections so that you could increase the accuracy solution. The Galileo NMA authentication that will actually, we think that it will, and we hope that it will bring it will enable commercially sensitive applications. For example, for the fraud management, billing and payment, location, the service itself, it will provide on one of the signals of E1, E1B, it will provide within the navigation message bits that thanks to it, you can actually find out as a user whether the data or the data within the navigation message that you are receiving, that it is really coming from the satellite. So it's what first step against the spoofing attempts. And the multipath resistance, the third section down here is actually about the signal E5, the second frequency. It is a matter of fact that this by its inherent features, this signal in E5 is much better resistant to multipath. So with the advance of the dual frequency smartphones, that actually the reason why actually you can get one of the reasons why you are getting higher accuracy with the dual frequency smartphones, because they are using E1, E5 frequencies. can skip this because I already defined what the NMA stands for and how it can help. Okay, getting to the applications of the locations-based services, or actually all the mass market devices. You have there on the left side and left-hand side list as we see it from the functionality. We are trying to categorize the applications within the location-based services segment, so you can see and get actually inspired when thinking about your idea, what your application should be doing. I think I will not go into details of all these. You can definitely do that after we finished looking into the variety of categories and where it could be used. I want to provide you some sources where you can search for ideas. We are actually supporting a competition that is called Galileo Masters, that is there, I think, for 15 years now. And within the so-called Hall of Fame, you can search for the winners of the last 15 years, and there you can get inspired what actually could be done in line definitely with the hackathon objectives and within the boundary of the topics. So there you can definitely search whether there is an application similar, what you have in mind, or how they resolve it, or how the application looks like. And definitely I invite you to look at the Google Play whenever you have an idea for an app, to really check how whether what applications are there and how do they function, what do they provide. But I think that's actually straightforward, so you will do that and do this check for sure. And just a small add on the Galileo. We have a website that is called usegalileo.eu, where you can actually check out which devices are compatible, meaning using or able to track the Galileo signals and using it for the position, velocity, and timing solutions. So you can check out whether your smartphone, whether your measuring, surveying device is supporting Galileo, or whatever, which segment the device is coming from. You can check out what devices are using it. It is a living database. It's being updated on some time scale, so there might be some devices on the market that are not yet included, but we are doing our best to keep monitoring the market. And we have I think very few minutes left. I have actually this section on Android raw measurements. It's more advanced. I mean, we don't have to within the hackathon go into that much detail or utilizing the raw measurements, but it could be considered as a benefit when evaluating, because it's a place where you can really play with the GNSS data and the functionalities within the Android devices. So just briefly, in 2016, Google made these so-called GNSS raw measurements available, and we actually set up a task force. And one of the outputs of the task force was so-called white paper on the raw measurements. So I encourage you to download if you are interested in coding and really playing with how to actually compute the pseudo ranges. You are welcome to use this white paper for understanding that. But coming back to the raw measurements, what they are, because before the Android 7, you had access only to very basic data. I will not mention all of them, but you basically received, if I simplify, just the solution, the position, and some additional data. And that was it. But with the raw measurements, with the access to the raw measurements, with API 23 and higher, you actually have access to the receiver time, to the clock bias, which is actually crucial for recomputing the pseudo range. And you also have access to navigation message bits, and you also have access to code and carrier phase, which is actually necessary for using or computing the solution, position solution with a technique called RTK. And so as was Professor Bose mentioning, so with the raw measurements, you actually have access to much more data. I think I will skip this slide, or just briefly, the raw measurements actually are data that are coming before the pseudo range generation. So if you decide to use them, you actually have to reconstruct the pseudo range and compute it. So within the white paper, I'm referring to it again, you can find the guidance how to actually do that. And once you have the pseudo ranges, you can compute the PVT, the position, velocity, and time solutions, and compare it, for example, with what the chipset of the smartphone is providing. So what is so interesting about the raw measurements? I think there is quite a broad usage. You can actually calculate the PVT on your own while using additional data from other sensors and sources. So already mentioned PPP is possible, RTK, but you have also access to the already mentioned OSNMA when it comes operational, hopefully next year. Briefly, there are not all the smartphones that has Android 7 and higher does not support access to the raw measurements. So I encourage you to check out this website provided by Google, where you have an overview what smartphone supports, what data you can get access to. We have established within the task force, that's another output, we have established the discussion forum and measurements database. So feel free to even raise questions there. My colleagues will answer to you anything that you are interested in within the area. But first, really, I can encourage you to read the white paper to understand the in and out. The benefits of the raw measurements, or 4 areas where we see that the development can be done within the scientific use and R&D. You can, as already mentioned, you can use it for increasing the accuracy within the device. You can use it for the integrity robustness, the famous OSNMA, and you can use the raw measurements to get better performance, or to actually monitor the performance, and even you can use it for the educational purposes, of course. Couple of examples of apps that are relying on the raw measurements. This one is an example of the high accuracy application. It's called PPP WizLight. Feel free to.
I'm very sorry to interrupt, Martin. Would it be possible to round up shortly?
Sure. Yeah.
We have an next webinar starting, and people are asking to join us there. Sure.
No problem. This is one of the last slides. So
excellent.
Very briefly, feel free to go to Google Play to read and download GNSS Logger, another important app that's actually provided by Google. It's a logging and a monitoring app. So if you really want to play with the data from the satellites, this is one of the very good apps as well. And I think this is quite important for me to tell you. There is on the GitHub there is source code, open source code of the GNSS Compare application, where they made available already the code for computing the pseudo ranges, and even they have the PVT estimators, weighted least squares, and so forth. So if you can actually, you doesn't have to start from scratch and actually use, for example, this source code. If you really want to do also some hacking during the hackathon, which is not actually a compulsory thing. So I think, yeah, I reached the end of the presentation. Sorry for talking that much, but I think it was crucial to give you these messages. But definitely during the hackathon, we'll repeat and provide you more insights into what's there. And with that, yeah, I hand over to Hannes. Thank you.